Small group. That's okay. We'll go faster.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you today. Thanks for joining. Welcome. First day, very exciting. I appreciate you making the time in your busy schedules. We'll jump right in a moment. I know we have some people just getting in. So fun to see everyone joining. I know some of you are in the snow. Hope everybody's safe and well. Some of you are in sun. The nature of working with a national organization. All right. Couple more joining and we'll get started. I know we have a lot of good information to cover, and I'm excited to hear from all of you on your questions and how we can help. All right, let's get started. So welcome to Make the Magic Session 1 at CUSM's National Leadership Summit. Super excited to see all of you today. Today we'll be covering in-person event logistics. Tons of event questions will be answered, and please be sure to check out other event Make the Magic sessions in the Summit app. Because there's lots of information in there. I am Isabel Biggie Smiles. I'm here with my colleagues, Hannah, Alaska, and also Tyler Dibbs in the background. Shout out to Tyler for helping to host. We'll do some formal introductions in a minute. But first, I'd love to start with an icebreaker. Please put your answers in the chat. If you planned yourself the perfect birthday party, where would it be and what would you do? Can't wait to see what everybody answers. Take a second to think. I know you're all great party planners. I love birthdays. Anyone? I know for me, I would spend it with friends and family, and I would have lots of cake and ice cream. I still remember one of my favorite cakes from when I was a kid, and I've been craving it ever since my 8th birthday party. So I would have that cake again and really celebrate. Chat is enabled now. Feel free to put your answers in there. Lots of attendees still joining. So as a refresher, if you planned yourself the perfect birthday party, where would it be and what would you do? Anywhere at the beach, I see. Cowboy, great answer. I'm with you. A safari tour to feed giraffes with my family and friends. Oh, I love that. Somewhere warm for sure. Thinking of all those people in the snow. Disneyland, love it. Lots of great ideas. Fantastic. So we have a lot of good party planners here. Get ready to plan some fun events with CUSM, but keep your birthday party thoughts in mind too. Let's go to the next slide and get started. All right, so I'm Isabel. My camp name is Biggie Smiles Andrews. I'm the Vice President of Development at Camp CUSM. I am very excited to connect with all of you today. I'd like to pass to Hannah, Alaska, to give some introductions for herself.
Yeah, hello, party planning people. My name is Hannah. My cousin name is Alaska, and I am a senior program coordinator for our Virginia and North Carolina chapters. And if I had to plan a perfect birthday party, I'm thinking like picnic in the woods. Maybe that sounds scary. Maybe in a field somewhere outside with a lot of cheese, probably would be the dream.
Love it. Great ideas. I'm all down with the picnic. And there is a big cheese theme at CUSM. I don't know if people have noticed, but I think it's a great idea. Anyway, welcome everyone. Today, I wanted to cover some session goals and expectations. So to review goals for today, what we're going to be doing is reviewing industry stats and in-person event best practices. Our goal is to always bring you up to speed on what's going on in the landscape for events overall. We're going to identify some common setbacks and opportunities, both pre-event and day night of. We're going to share tips and tricks for in-person event logistics and time management based on KESM National Event Team experience. So myself and my colleagues have gathered this information for you, and we're going to help you feel confident in your abilities to create a fun and meaningful Make the Magic event. I will say I've been so impressed. I came to Camp KESM about 2 years ago, and I've learned so much from all of you by proxy from what I've heard about all these great Make the Magic events. So my job is to remind you of all the great skills and talents many of your predecessors and you bring to the table, and that we can do this. So stay tuned. But those are our goals for today. The expectations are that you participate. We are here to learn together, and social learning is very critical, especially when it comes to events. So please be sure to participate in the chat or your breakout room. We have a great activity that Alaska has prepared for you, so be ready, come with ideas. If your co isn't here, make sure that they get the information when these recordings are published next week. So please look for those on February 11th. Please mark that in your calendar. We'll have a specific Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please have your questions ready for that piece of the session. In the meantime, you're welcome to put things in the chat. That's great. We'll try to keep track of that. And then as we go further in the activity, we'll also open things up to questions. So save your questions. But in the meantime, if you're just trying to mark them, just put them in the chat and we'll get to them. Great. So for an overview, we're here to help you pull off an amazing event and proactively think through all the opportunities and situations that can come up when hosting a successful event. And so having things come up at events is not an anomaly. They happen. And so our goal here is to be really proactively thinking through all the things that can happen and approach them in a solution-focused way with a sense of optimism, which goes along with KESM values. So our goal is to just help you prepare to think through those things in advance. So when things happen, you're able to handle things in the moment and everything goes off without a hitch. Make the Magic coordinators, I just want to remind you of your role in creating this amazing event experience. So your job is to oversee all logistics and planning related to your Make the Magic event. You're to work with your chapter advisory and coordinator board to proactively produce a successful event. So really be sure to coordinate with those boards in particular. Create and implement outreach that brings community members to the event. So activate your network, that is part of your role. And successfully recruit and manage events that are essential to making things happen. So part of that recruitment is really looking at your volunteer base and all the people involved. So really look at your event management overall, but making sure your recruitment for the event, whether it's invitees or volunteers that will be helping, you're managing all of that. It's a big job, but it's a doable job. And with all the tools and resources we'll have in place today, and then overall in your guides, it's really possible. So we're very excited about this upcoming season. And next slide, please. Thank you. How you make the magic happen. I think it's really important in any event or anything you do with KESM to really put things in context. So please remember your work helps KESM every day create impact at a very large scale. We are a national organization. We have a mission that is super important. It helps people in their daily lives. And many of you know that just from being connected with us, but please center in that. You've probably heard the phrase that's been tossed around here at KESM is more money, more mission. That is why we're raising money, so we can help more people, so we can scale and continue that tradition of scaling, which we've held for over 20 years. But wait, there's more. The way you engage through these events makes a huge difference in our national reputation, right? So when we're not only speaking with donors, but also when we're speaking with other cancer nonprofits that use us as a resource, and at the national level when we're fundraising, what you do at the local level at Make the Magics makes a big difference in our reputation as a national organization. It's also key to spreading awareness. So please remember the importance of what you're doing. It's significant. Some of these events raise 20, 30, 40% of your goal as a chapter, and that's super significant. But more importantly, you're really helping us enhance our national reputation, which is very important. So thank you for all you're doing. Industry statistics. I think this also helps to frame things up. And we've definitely had a significant amount of challenges. That would be an understatement, correct? But when we're looking at industry stats, there's a lot of optimism in fundraising. And I just think that's important for you to remember when you go into these events. I've listed them here. You're welcome to read through them. But to overview, 67% of worldwide donors also choose to volunteer locally in their communities, and 56% regularly attend fundraising events. So this is a 2022 quote. I think that's really important that, people are excited to engage with events, and they're also very, very interested in volunteering. I can share as the head of development at Custom that we hear this a lot with partner calls right now and donor calls, is that people are eager to connect. They want to know when the next volunteering opportunity is. So they also want to come to your events. So please remember that. Overall, giving grew 4.1% over the past year, and this is the 6th consecutive year of growth. So donors are giving, and they're giving at an increase, right? So philanthropy is going up. 84% of all donors are more likely to give if a match is offered. So remember that when we get further along in the presentation. And donors note that they would make a larger gift if a match is applied to the donation. So please remember that again when you're launching your strategy. Match is really important. I think we're advancing to the next slide. Great, thank you. So some more takeaways here from what we just talked about is giving is increasing in light of the pandemic. So a lot of people have said, oh my gosh, we're going through all this. How can people be giving more? Is it the right time to ask for money? Yes, it's the right time to ask for money. If it's not going to Custom, it's going somewhere else. Giving gives people away right now a sense of connection. There's some studies that say that sometimes giving back can promote a sense of well-being, can promote healing. So think about it in that way, is people right now want to connect and they want to help. They want to create global change and impact. So really, really think about that when you're asking for money. The time is right. People still have interest in connecting through events and a cause. We saw that through volunteerism and interest in event attendance, and matches are super important again. So we'll talk about that in event strategy. Next slide, please. Thank you. Talking about industry best practices, I think it's really important for people to remember that you should be talking to your donors before the event in a way that is securing as much revenue beforehand. This is a little different in virtual events. The expectation's a little higher when it comes to percentages. But ideally, you want to go into an event knowing what you can produce, right? So you always have your goals and your budgets and your pipelines and all that stuff, but you want to have as much secured as possible going into the event. So one way to do that is to focus on sponsorships. Always make sure those sponsor decks are ready in time. We have some great templates. And use important deadlines to really inspire giving. So a great way to do that is if you're launching your sponsor deck, be sure to put the deadline to make it on your invitation or to be on your social media. All those things are ways you can drive sponsorships and support before the event. So please remember to do that. Some more industry best practices as far as talk to your donors beforehand. Consider doing a call-a-thon to your invitee list. So one of the things you can do is just ask them if they got the invitation. So if you're mailing your invitation, use that call as a follow-up and ask them if they have any questions about the event overall. You could even ask them if they have a question about the paddle raise, right? So some donors might not be aware that there's a paddle raise opportunity. That's a really great way for you to talk up the paddle raise and get some advanced pledges in the door. Come prepared with some ideas on how that paddle raise support or your sponsorship or your donation is going to be applied. So for example, this many dollars helps a camper attend camp, or this many dollars supports our work in DEI, which is critical in these times. So come prepare with those kind of metrics to really get donors excited about not only coming, but also supporting financially and spreading awareness for the event. Always be ready to wrap up your pledge in an email. One of the worst things is when you have a misunderstanding, you think you have a pledge, you don't have a pledge, wrap it up in email. So that's really important before the event. Please don't go to your events thinking somebody's going to support it and they said, oh, I'll give you this. And I would love to make this wonderful philanthropic contribution and you're not sure where you left it. So please wrap those up in email and just have a whole spirit of gratitude wrapped around it, because it's always most important that we express that gratitude. If you call in advance and you get a decline on attendance, take the opportunity to ask them if you can send some more information about how they can support either your event or KESM overall. Great. Some more industry best practices. So be nimble, be prepared, rehearsed, and ready to adjust if needed. So these are tried and true kind of things that most fundraisers like yourselves use to kind of keep centered in what's happening with events. So guidelines change right now. We all knew this. Please be ready. Check in with your venue on a regular basis to see if there's anything you should be aware of and if they need anything from you as changes arise. Guests may have a lot of questions. Build time into your project plans and answer a lot of questions the week and day of the event. Make sure you have a point person for these questions that can be focused on guests and their experience when fielding inquiries. And rehearse and prepare your program. Run your program by someone who normally doesn't attend a Make the Magic or even know KESM. Ask them if they find it compelling, inspirational, too long or too short. Make adjustments where needed before the event. So super important to really think about these things before the event. There's always adjustments that need to be made, and so be ready to make them, please. And just be yourself, focus on the mission. Again, the guest experience is the most important here and things will come up. So really focus on connecting with your guests and putting the mission front and center. Take some time before the event. I use this as a practice before my meetings and before my presentations, even before I gave this presentation today. I really centered on why I KESM. Why am I here? What are we looking to do? Who are we helping and why it's important? So take some time before your event to just give yourself a quiet moment and think about that. Do some time team building, right? You have a big group of people that are really focused on a wonderful thing, and it's important for you to take some time to connect with them so everybody feels inspired by what they're doing together. And remember that your guests want the mission and you to shine. So there aren't guests there critiquing your event. They're not saying, oh, I wish there was this, I wish there were that. They're cheering you on. So when you build these Make the Magic events, please remember that it's important to connect with your guests and they all want what's best for you and the mission. Pre-event logistics and considerations. So I'd like to just take a second to review a little bit of what many of you received in the fall. Take a second, please, to glance at it. I see lots of great activity in the chat. So thank you for all of that and keep up the good work. So fall review. Early bird prices are great incentives, but please remember no flash sales. There's no incentive there. So just wanted to send a reminder on that. Identify your speakers early and make those asks early. Help them get content prepared ahead of time. Prepare your run of show far in advance, but remember to prioritize with other items. So you can start your run of show as soon as you like, but make sure that there's other high priority items first. But give yourself enough time definitely to develop that run of show. You want to be sure to get your in-kind donation agreements in writing. And again, this is along with the pledges. Please be sure to wrap those up in writing as well. Alcohol is permitted at the event, but we shouldn't have the liability. 1 to 2 drinks included in ticket versus cash bar is a nice touch. So remember the alcohol policy overall. Students should not drink even if they are of age. And then the secret to filling the room, there is no secret to filling the room. You can start early, you can be super prepared, have a good plan, be sure to reach out with your committees and boards to make sure that everybody is bringing people to the event and you can have a guest goal there too. Wonderful. So on communication and activation, a lot of people have questions about how frequently you should communicate with your attendees. They'll always have questions for you. And so there's a really good cadence overall about how many times people can reach out. And so I would think that you should always be ready to send information close to the event and prepare that cadence increases over time. But you should do weekly for sure. And then make sure that you have something the week of or the day of the event. So that's really important to remember. It never hurts to send a can't wait to see you email the day of with tons of logistics. Think about how you're going to be using your boards, committees, and volunteers. Are you recruiting them far enough in advance? How will you communicate with them before or during the event? And do you have a floater? So that means for volunteers, how will you thank them at the event? And also how will you thank them the evening of? So be sure to thank those volunteers. Next slide, please. What is your check-in and check-out process for your guests? That is a super important question to ask on pre-event logistics and considerations. How will you collect your pledges and payments? What tech are you using? Some other things you should be considering are your food and beverage. You should also be looking at, are your sponsors expecting anything particular, like specially placed tables? Do you have them front and center for the paddle raise? Those are really other important pre-event logistic considerations. The last thing you should also think through is how much time you'll have for testing AV. AV is something that you should always be running through quite frequently. So please be sure to think through that. Guest safety and COVID guidelines. This is something in looking at the current landscape, I want to make sure that you are checking in with Camp Kessem's COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. So if you have questions about this, please check in with your PC. Also, please be sure to check in with your venue to make sure you have a sense of requirements for food and beverage service overall and cocktail hours, right? So a lot of venues are making recommendations on that. You should definitely check in with your venue in addition to consulting your PC to make sure you have all the most recent information from Kessem. Be prepared to inform your guests of any check-in requirements. So this is something, again, with your communications, like if you're doing weekly communications, you want to be sure to keep them up to speed. Keeping them abreast of the situation gives them confidence in attending your event. It also helps them be prepared if they need to present any sort of information. So I would just stress that as you get into that regular communication we talked about, be sure to be ready to integrate any information that you need to share about safety precautions in those communications. Night of logistics are really important because you get into your event and you have the best laid plans, and then something will shift or happen. So these are just some highlights of things that you should have on your checklist and be sure to address the night of. You should always be prepared to greet and thank your speakers, your volunteers, and your boards. You should be greeting everyone you can, right? But you're going to be doing a lot of different things. So please take a second to assign people out for greeting to make sure that your guests feel really welcome. I don't know about you, but if I'm invited to someone's home and I'm not greeted, that feels a little awkward. So you want to be sure to greet everybody, make them feel welcome, show gratitude for them being here. Take a second to check your table numbers, right? So if you're using table numbers, be sure to check those to make sure those are assigned correctly. There's nothing worse than getting to an event and having a guest confused about where they should sit or where they're supposed to be. So be sure to check those. Confirm quiet time with the hotel and the food and beverage teams, right? So when you look at food and beverage overall, if you're doing any sort of activation at an event, speakers are speaking, you have a paddle raise going on, there's always going to be a little bit of noise from plates and clinking glasses and all that kind of thing. So when you're doing your paddle raise, when you're showing any sort of video, you want to be sensitive to noise. So it's up to you whether you decide that that's a complete quiet environment or not, but you want to coordinate that with your hotel or your venue, whatever you're using for your event site, to make sure that anybody that's serving food and beverage is aware of that. I would recommend that paddle raise is completely centered on your program and any sort of call to action, and that there isn't that kind of clinking going on. You want to be sure to do a run through with your speakers and check AV. You also want to make sure to have a huddle in advance of the event, at least 2 hours with your team, so everybody can review roles. And then make sure people can identify any floated volunteers. So if you have people around, try to make sure they have a name tag or something where they know that they can go to that person for help. Also make sure the registration team has clear directions on how to register guests and credit cards and close out the evening. All right, so I've offered a lot of information. I hope some of this is helpful. We're going to give you a second to just rest, kind of digest that information. We will get into Q&A soon, but first I'd love to pass to Alaska for the activity.
Yes, get ready, everyone. I would love, before we jump into the specifics of what the activity is, as of right now, in this moment, whether your event is at the end of March, beginning of April, end of April, right now where you are on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident you are in your event, 1 being super not confident, I feel like I don't even know what MTM stands for, 5 being I'm so confident it could be tomorrow and it would be record breaking. If everyone can put a number 1 to 5, wherever you land in that range, 1 being not super confident, 5 being super confident, how is everyone feeling about their Make the Magic events right now in this present moment? 3.5, a 3? Oh, I'm sensing a theme. That is a pretty consistent. Okay. It's also okay if you're feeling not a 3 and you're like, I feel like I would be a 1.7. That's fine. Okay, that was helpful. Y'all are very like-minded in your confidence. That's great. Okay, we are going to do, you may have guessed, breakout rooms, everyone's favorite. What we're gonna do in these breakout rooms is, like, feel free to take a second, introduce yourself to your peers, your custom name, your chapter, maybe when your event is, that's fun, get to know each other. And then what we're going to do is, in a second, Dibs is going to take us to the next slide, and you're going to see a long list of MTM pre-event tasks. They are scrambled, so they are not in priority order or in timeline order. So what I would love for everyone to do in their groups, there are about 5 of you in each group, is to see if you can get them in the correct order. So what should be your top priority? What should you be focusing on if we're pretending like our event is 8 weeks away, which hopefully for some of you feels like it hits home, maybe give or take a week or 2. So thinking like starting at the very top, our event is 8 weeks out. What do we focus on? Okay, it's 2 weeks later. What do we focus on now? Until you get up until 1 week out, because there are a lot of things. If you know them all, that's super helpful. But if you don't know the correct order in how to prioritize them, then things can get really jumbled. So Dibs, if you can take us to this lovely list. Wow, it's long. There are a lot of things on there. The expectation isn't necessarily for y'all to like actually put it in perfect order. I would just love for you to pull out, like, of the bullet points in here, which stand out to you as should be closer to the top of the list, which stand out to you as like should be somewhere in the middle, and which do we want to save for the like 3 to 2 or 1 week before the event, and see if you can just generally kind of place things correctly. I am going to drop ooh, that is messy, a chat version of the list. This is basically, I just copy pasted everything in here so that once we break you out, you can still see what all of these items are. Read through them, see if there are any immediate ones that come to mind. It's like, that is definitely something we should focus on first, or that is definitely something that we should save for 1 week out. And see if you align on any, see if there are any that maybe you disagree on. Someone thinks it should be 5 weeks out. Someone else thinks we should save it for 2 weeks out. And then we'll give y'all like 10 minutes to introduce, chat with each other, and then see if you can correctly order this list. And then we'll come back together and see if we're all aligned on a priority order. If that sounds good to everyone, if you can pop a chat thumbs up or react thumbs up so I can confirm this sounds like a good deal. Oh, I'm seeing the thumbs up. Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, yeah, we'll do 10 minutes as well. Does that sound good? I think we're doing pretty good on time. Cool. Okay, awesome. Amazing. See you in 10 minutes. There we go. Everyone is back. Welcome. How did it go? General, thumbs up, medium thumb down, feeling okay. I saw 3 thumbs up. That feels encouraging. 3. Love that. Yeah, thumbs up feels equivalent to a 3. Cool. Okay, we're gonna do a little bit of a share out. And then I'll pass it over to Isabel to see how Isabel would organize this list. We'll just start with like the general top section, like the top third of your list. What would be the things on here that you definitely want to make sure are prioritized and are focused on first? You can drop it in the chat, or you're more than welcome to unmute and share out. Choose your own adventure.
I can share. So some things that our group talked about that are like really important to get done, like between 8 and 6 weeks right away, is to make sure you have that invitee list with 3 to 5 times your guest goal, and then working from that, getting out your save the dates to just make sure that people know when your event is and that you have enough people potentially being invited. So that was one thing we talked about a lot.
Heck yeah, love that. If I could bold that, put it in a highlight, maybe make it a fun font. Yeah, 100%. If you don't focus on inviting all your humans to the event and making sure humans know that the event is happening, the event is not going to be worth it at all. Focusing on your humans first. Yeah, invitee list. We love it. How many of y'all are like in the middle of that right now? Like putting the final touches on your invitee list? Or are you all just done with it already? Already did it. Oh, okay, well, heck yeah. Anything else that anyone felt like definitely lives in that 8 to 6 weeks out range?
I mean, I can share more from what our group was
Go
saying.
for it.
So something I mentioned was that, so I'm 7 weeks out right now, and something that we've been really focusing on is just making sure that our programming, so like how we're going to run the night of the event is going to go, and making sure that we have our guest speakers communicated with, like that we've started that communication, that we know we want them there, and just start working on what we want them to say at our event. So those are 2 more things that we've been prioritizing, and we're at 7 weeks. So I feel like those would fall into that category too. But
Totally. Yeah, that is a great one. Like solidifying your speakers and your MCs, those again are something that you are relying on other people. Definitely not something we want to solidify like a week out or 2 weeks out or even 4 weeks out. Like that's an ask we have of another human being. We could like rearrange the order of the programming whenever we want. That's fine, but we need to make sure those humans are prepared to do the thing. Totally. How about like a month out? A little bit closer to like medium level priority. Anyone want to save Bolt from having to share again? Supplies. Yeah, maybe we have some like big things on there that we don't want to stress about having to scramble and get like the week before. Especially if we want to like see if we can get them donated. That's cool to prioritize a month out. What else?
I would say confirm with photographer, like have the photographer beforehand already, but just have that date confirmed that they can definitely attend.
Love that. Yeah, also something that involves another human being. So might want to give them a little bit more time. I love that. What about 2 to 3 weeks? Now we're tiptoeing up a little bit closer to the event. What's on our to-do list now?
I'd say one would be finalizing the guest seating arrangement, just because we have like a better idea of like how many and who would be there.
Totally. Yeah. that's probably something that you might want to be working on for a little bit, probably gonna like have a rough draft, maybe move it around a little bit. It's definitely not something that you want to be doing the night before, for sure. But it's also not something that we need to be doing a month out because tickets are still open. Yeah, for sure. That's a great one. Okay, lastly, what do we say for last? The event is 7 days away. What have we kept until now? Dibs, no. Not approved.
I'll go. I'd say finalizing the programming and like going to the show. Like I'd like to have at least 2 weeks, but I mean, you know, things change. So with that, we gotta adjust.
Yeah, maybe it's like figuring out which speaker is going to go first and then where we're going to put the video that we're going to show. Yeah. Maybe like assigning volunteer roles at this time would be a great thing to prioritize. Cool. Okay. Isabel, what should we be looking at here? Take
Love
it away.
it. Well, I loved hearing all these answers. They were fantastic. And I love just hearing the thoughts. So what I would say is there's no kind of magic formula here. There are some key things that many of you have highlighted that need to come first, but sometimes you are juggling a bunch of tasks. So I tried to highlight tier 1 and tier 2. So really looking at that 8 to 6 weeks and 5 to 4 weeks. So Dibs, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I can kind of show where my mind was when I sorted through tasks. So tier 1 for me was definitely, you obviously want to finalize your venue, date, time, menu, all that. What I would say is menu, you can kind of leave floating a little bit, but it was all in one category. So you can put that up there too. But if you need to finalize the menu a little bit later, that's all right. But date, time, place, super important. The ticket prices for sure, right? You can't launch anything later in tier 2 invites if you don't have the ticket price. What I put first is really making sure all your boards are activated and you're getting that invitee list expectation. So Bolt, I love how you were focusing so much on save the dates and stuff early on, really, really important. Putting together your guest goals and then sponsor deck and prospect list. So always remembering that you need to have a prospect list and a pipeline. So I put that really, really early on. That really helps you to plan for what your revenue can be and keep you on track. And then tier 2, as you'll see, I had save the dates, really, really important. Work on the payment system, open your tickets and send to the invitee list, secure your event MCs. You don't want anybody to be surprised that they're MC at your event. So as a courtesy, so people aren't worried, you know, try to select those pretty early on. And then securing the 2 speakers for your programming. So those were my picks. Again, I'm honoring that there's a lot of different moving parts, but really think through those tiers and how they fit in with the list that you developed. But great job, everyone. Really appreciate your participation. And Alaska, thanks for putting this activity all together. Great. So we'll move to the next slide for Q&A sessions. I see some things coming in. What I would say for this piece is you are welcome to call out your questions. We don't have to be so officious. So just be sure to respect your fellow participants and give space for everybody's voice. So it says you can call out your questions or you can put them in the chat and Alaska will tee them up. So there was a lot of information that was shared throughout this presentation. I really dislike just reporting out and that type of thing. I'd love to hear from you, but take time to really digest what we talked about today and know that this is your space to answer any specific questions you have that are kind of holding you up from planning or concerning to you. And then after this, what we'll do is we'll just talk through, you know, how you can get support where you need it. So open to questions. Anybody'd like to go first? Anything on your mind? Anyone?
All right, well, I got one. So
Go for it, Bo.
so something I've been thinking is, so I know my role as the Make the Magic coordinator right now. I'm getting everything ready and ultimately it's my job to make sure the event goes on like without a hitch. So that night, I'm unsure if am I an MC speaker or am I doing something else during the event, or what is my role during the event, like when stuff is actually going on?
Great, excellent question, Bolt. I love that you're thinking through that now. And I think that can be really confusing. So what I would recommend in your situation is if you can have someone else be the MC, that's ideal. It's wonderful if you're welcoming guests. And it's wonderful if you have a place in the program, right, where you can say a few words and things like that. But I would protect your time because as a Make the Magic coordinator, you're kind of like the strategist, right? You're making sure everything's moving forward. You're making sure your team has everything they need. And so in some circles, they'll call that calling the show, right? So you should have your clipboard, you have your timeline, you're making sure everybody's on point and everybody's mobilized. And you should be that go-to person with support from your team. If you're the MC as well, nobody can come to you, right? They're doing hand signals. They're like, hey, over here, I need you, and you can't get to them. So I would really outsource that position. You want your MC to be somebody who, like you, is able to really command the crowd, bring inspiration, ad-lib very easily. So those are some really key characteristics in MCs. Use humor when appropriate, and just really embody the Camp Kesem spirit. And just that feeling that we have so much in our programming. So what I would say is definitely take yourself out of that role if you can. For teams that are smaller, I would say if you absolutely need to do that, just be sure you have other people in charge of running of show. But for all intents and purposes, if you have, you know, somewhat of a team, I would really recommend that you not be MC as well. It's an excellent question. I never even thought of that. Good job. Other questions? Nothing's off limits. This is important stuff. I'd rather you have a space now to ask it than not ask it and then wonder.
So it looks like we have one in the chat. Any advice for acquiring sponsors?
For sure. First of all, be yourself, be super enthusiastic. So we talked about that. I don't mean to belabor that point. There's a lot of people giving right now. And so what I would say is approach your sponsors with a sense of knowing about why you cast them again. So start there. Be really proactive in building your pipeline. So think about businesses and individuals that are already active philanthropically in your area. So if you're going out somewhere, you're looking at an ad, local ad, flag that company, flag that person that's supporting your local community and put it in your pipeline. Now you always want to check with your PC about who you're soliciting and no-fly zone and all that stuff, but there's a lot of local philanthropy near each of your chapters, right? And so you want to be sure to build your prospect list as much as possible. A lot of research can go a long way. You can also look at annual reports for other nonprofits that are similar to Kesem in your area. So there's a lot of information online. If you just Google, you know, annual report in such and such area for this charity, you will see a ton of companies that support that charity, and there's nothing wrong with putting them in your pipeline. So really, you know, all I would ask is you check the no-fly zone so that you're coordinated at the national level. But we always want to support you and make sure that you're building your pipeline. So check with your PC, check with your advisory board, and committees if you need support. But I would say a really robust pipeline is always the way to go. You want to push to invitation, right? So sponsors love visibility. They love interaction with your program. One way on the higher level sponsorship. So let's say your higher level is 5,000 to 10,000. What you really want to be sure to do is offer them something special that they can get in the program. So let's say your invitation deadline has passed. And so sponsors no longer can make it on the invite as a list, you know, someone that's listed. Start to use things for those higher level sponsors. Like, we'd love to announce you at the podium. We would love to, you know, say your name during the program. We'd love to put you on our PowerPoint presentation, something like that. The only thing there that you have to watch for is that you're consistent across all sponsorship levels, right? So don't promise something you can't deliver on, but there's always something fun and kind of flashy you can offer at the event. So use those entitlements to really get people to give. If you know sponsors that are connected to each other, That's a really nice way. You can also ask another sponsor like, hey, if you know anyone else that you think in your networks that would love to give, we need an internal champion. We need people to activate their networks. This is super important for this year as we scale our services. So you can ask other supporters to keep you in mind in their networks, and that's hugely powerful. The last thing with sponsorships is there's a really great phrase that I love as a fundraiser is ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice. So you want to approach your sponsors as, I'd love your take on this event. Like, this is what we have planned. We're really excited about it. Do you have anything that you'd like to see? And do it under the auspices of like, you don't think, you're not sure if you can totally create that in the moment but that you'd like their input on what you'd like to build. And sponsors love that. Donors love that. So kind of take a mentee stance when you approach sponsors, know what you're doing and say, this is our event, but we'd love your advice on other things you'd like to see or things you're looking forward to at our event. That's really powerful. Did that help answer? I'm looking in the chat to see if that helped as an answer. Open to any follow-up on that. Great. Yep, and Alaska has a good point there. Good points in the chat here. Thank you so much for the feedback. And my pleasure, Minnie. Okay, Alaska, I'm gonna rely on you for the chat. I don't have my readers on.
Okay, Dibs asked a good question. How many volunteers should I have at the night of Make the Magic? And is there such a thing as too many?
That's a great question. I would say as many as you feel like you can give a good experience to. It's always important, and as many as you can manage, right? There's nothing worse than having a ton of volunteers that aren't managed well, right? Because it's not fair to them. Everybody here is giving of their time, right? And time is important and experience is important. So what I would say is don't take on more volunteers than you can manage. I don't have a hard and fast rule for it, but I'd say overall, if you're going to have 110 attendees, you want about 10 volunteers for those 100 attendees. But it's not a hard and fast rule. I think I would do a gut check on what fits for you. I would just say, don't overwhelm yourself with too many volunteers. Maybe think through first what you need to accomplish the night of the event, and think about your personal capacity and that of your team. And so I have this task. I know that I have 3 people I need to implement this, and then work backwards from there. So look at your night of activities. And then, as we talked about earlier in the presentation, assign a couple floaters. And I think that's the way to do it. So work backwards into that formula. Excellent question. Great. Cool. Any others that I missed? Anyone? Okay, we're pretty much coming to the close of the session. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for all your hard work. Please be sure to check in if you have other questions. You can check in the in-person Make the Magic guide with chapter resources. So please check in with your PC if there's any follow-up. We are here to support you. We are so proud of the good work you are doing, and we are full of gratitude. So thank you for being here today. And I'll hope to connect with you in the future, but great luck. You won't need it. You'll do fantastic. Take care.